Right. My mom always said running is one of those things you get out of it what you put into it. So my mom she would always say to me, if you're going to put more miles into it, you're probably going to do better. If you're going to put less, but I know that kind of depends on the person. There are some people that can run really low mileage and run fantastic times, and there are other
Right.
people, high mileage people. But that was always her thing: was you get out of it what you put into it.
Running with Maverick and Wolfman. Hey guys, we've got a special guest tonight, Marina Martino, who is quite an accomplished runner. She is a Hall of Famer from our alma mater, Misericordia University, along with accomplishments in marathoning and road racing, and also pushing 2 kids in a running stroller.
Nice to be here tonight, guys. Thank you for having
Yeah,
me.
welcome.
Welcome. Don't forget
Um,
to find us on Facebook, Instagram. There's another one, the big one, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and hit the little bell so you know when we release stuff.
So, Marina, we're pretty excited to have you on here. Like I said, you have a lot of accomplishments in running, and your husband is also one of our former teammates and runners
Yeah.
from Misericordia as well, John Martino. The two of you have an interesting way of getting your runs in, I heard, from another source. And I'd like you to just kind of expand on how the two of you somehow managed to run a lot of miles with 2 kids.
So it's a juggling act, like anyone that has kids trying to do anything. So we usually both get up around. He's usually up at 4:30. I'm usually up at about 5. I get on the treadmill. He goes outside. He'll do his run. I do like half of my run on the treadmill. Then he gets home, and I have about like anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour, depending on when he gets back, to try and run as much as I possibly can outside. If I get the rest of my run done, great. If not, then it's back on the treadmill after he leaves for work. So it's a lot of juggling that. And when I can't do that, then we're out with the double stroller with the 2 kids, out at the local state park, or going down to like the levee system where it's a little bit flatter. But it's a lot of early mornings, and okay, well, I'll be on the treadmill, you'll be outside, and we'll flip flop once you get back.
That sounds great.
How old are the kids?
2 and 5.
Okay.
So I've definitely pushed my share of running strollers with kids in them. You know, we have 4, so we've done that. We've actually sold them all off at this point, though. No more running strollers for us. We're done with those. So the time does come where you don't need them anymore. But recently, my wife has started running a lot more, and probably putting in more mileage than I am at this point. So we have taken turns, and it is interesting trying to manage that.
Yeah, it's a lot of cooperation and trying to figure out, okay, like John only runs 6 days a week, so I know on Saturday I can go do my run outside. He's got the kids inside, so that's always like a little bit of a treat for me. But particularly during the week, he goes into work for 8 a.m, so like he's got to get it in before he goes, otherwise he's not home till almost 8 p.m. So it's a lot of just, okay, if we want to get it in, we're going to be on the treadmill, or, trying to figure out a different way to do it.
So how much mileage are you putting in at this point?
Probably more than I should be.
Okay.
So I typically run about 70 miles a week, 65 to 75. But I don't really take down weeks, which is why I'm saying that it's probably too much. Um, so I have it in my head that I have to do like 9 miles a day, which I know is not like healthy to think like every day you got to do 9 miles. So I know my friends laugh about it. They'll text me. They're like, you only did 8.5 today. Are you injured? I'm like, well, I was taking a little bit of a rest day. So that, yeah, usually because we're doing a lot of marathons, I usually try and keep my mileage a little bit higher just so that I can keep myself from getting injured when we do the marathons. But I found over the years that like 70 miles a week is like my sweet spot for performance. So that's
Okay.
usually that.
Nice.
What do you think about that, Wolfman? That sound pretty right?
I think it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Now, are you on a run streak? I noticed you said he runs 6 days a week. So
I think she said only 6 days a week.
He only he's lazy about his running. Sort of on a streak. I mean, I had taken a week off after our most recent marathon, so I know if I was on any type of streak, it's broken now.
yeah, I gotcha.
I'm not opposed to if I wake up in the morning and it's just not happening to being like, all right, I'm going to hop on the stationary bike and I'll do a bike / like lifting workout instead of going out for a run. But that doesn't happen as often as it probably should. So a lot of times I'm just trying to like turn off the fact that, oh, my legs are burning, but that's okay. That's okay. They're supposed to feel like that.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. So what are you training for now?
So right now my next big race is the Valley 10 miler in
Sweet.
I've
September.
heard rumor of that one.
Yeah.
What was that?
I've heard rumor of that race.
So I ran it this past year. It was a good time. They did a really nice job with it, and I'm excited to go back. I had a little bit of a tough race last year. Like right before it, I got pretty sick, and because I had paid for it, I was like, "Well, I'm gonna run it."
You have to.
Probably shouldn't have run it, but I did it, and I finished. And I got they said there would be some kind of like fun swag at the end. It ended up being a pair of sunglasses, and it was fun, and I wear them all the time.
That sounds great. I want sunglasses.
They'll probably have more. They didn't have the year on them. They were just branded with the name of the race. So I'm sure they'll have more this year coming up. But after that, we're signed up for Steamtown this year's, the Steamtown Marathon. So that's going to be our next big one. But just a couple little races throughout the summer. I'm kind of taking a little bit of an off season.
So I just want to know, if you beat John, then what happens? Like, is there some kind of prize? Is there a trophy that goes back and forth? Does someone pay for dinner? Like, how does it work?
So I remember not more than a couple years at this point. It was probably closer to like 8 to 10. We got asked by one of like the local newspapers. The reporter was asking me, I passed John in a 5K at like mile 2 or something like that. And he asked me like, well, how did you know you were going to pass him? I'm like, I knew he was going out too fast. And I just waited my turn until it was time to pass him. And they put that in the paper, like, oh, Marina knew she could go out behind John and just kind of hustle him until she could pass him. But we do have an ongoing, we do tease each other about who has faster PRs and stuff like that. That we're not like super competitive about it, but I always remind him that I have the faster marathon PR.
Which is what, by the way?
2:46.
Nice.
Which
nice.
It's been a hot minute since I ran that, but it was a good time. He still hasn't come close to it, so I remind him of that. He's got me in the half by like 20 seconds.
Okay.
But we have an ongoing thing where we're trying to do the 50 states. Whoever wins of the two of us, when we cross it off of our list, whoever wins gets to cross it off. So far, I have the majority of the cross-offs, and we like take a picture and all that. So sometimes, though, I think he lets me win. Like the one out in the marathon we did out in Kansas, where we were pushing our kids and trading off pushing the stroller. He let me take them to the finish line. So I think he kind of let me win that one, but I still took it as that I beat you.
Yeah, I think we'll ask him a different day.
Yeah. A win is a win. Vin
Exactly.
Diesel.
That's
It's
true.
my name is first in the race results. He can't deny that.
That's true.
So that's a pretty fast marathon. I mean, I am not a marathoner,
That's
and
pretty good.
but that sounds pretty quick to me, Wolfman.
It's better than my best.
I ran that like 3 weeks before John and I got married. And as I'm running it, I remember the biker was next to me because I was the first female. It was at the Wine Glass Marathon up in Corning, New York. They were biking next to me and they were like, "Oh, you know, the ladies behind you, they're pretty close." I'm like, "It's okay if they beat me. Like, I'm getting married in 3 weeks anyway." And they're like, "Oh, you know," so they're asking me about my wedding as I'm running. And I was just having a great time. And it wasn't until about like mile maybe 22 or 23 that I realized I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to break like 250." And at the time it was in 2017. So the Olympic marathon trials time was 2:45. So I just barely missed qualifying for that, which was a little bit of a bummer, but I'm still like proud to say that I was within 2 minutes of that time. So,
Oh, for sure, for
Well,
sure.
that's pretty awesome.
and then I
Yeah.
haven't run that fast since. So, it was a really good run, and then that's it. But I can
There's
say
time.
forever.
There's time.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to sustain plus have a family. So,
Right.
but at least
Now,
you did it, and like Wolfman said, there is potential there. I mean, you could possibly do it again.
Right. I like to say that the world record in the marathon starts with the 2, and my PR also starts with the 2. So I'm right there. I'm like within striking distance, just
That's
like
it.
35 minutes off. But like we're both in the same hour.
I'm gonna start saying that too. I like that. That's good.
Now we had talked to, I think it was when we talked to previous guest, was it Lori? Maybe that there's the different age groups too. As you get older, that's another thing is that you're going to be competing against different times then.
Mm-hmm.
So that will be pretty interesting too, because you might be like some phenomenal elite then.
I mean, I've got another couple years before I hit the masters division, but I'm hoping that maybe I can keep this up. But even locally, there are a lot of very good masters women's runners. Even not just women, men too. But I know particularly the women's side is they're tough.
Yeah, there are some talented local runners for sure.
Yeah,
There's a talented family of local runners. That's enough to compete with without the rest of them.
exactly.
So, but no, I mean, your times are phenomenal. Even when you're running back in college, your times are phenomenal. So, just kind of run us through like what kind of, what are some of your other PRs that you had?
So one that I'm particularly proud of, although I've only ever run, I guess, 2 10-milers. I did the Broad Street run back in 2015 and I ran 58:09 there. And I finished 12th woman, which for me was really exciting. To be in a race of that size and to finish in the top 12. So that was one. I ran 1:18 for the half back in, that was 2014 at the St. Luke's half. A lot of these PRs, it's been a little hot. It's been a few minutes since I ran them, but yeah, I mean, my 5K is probably not where it should be compared to everything else. I don't know if I've ever broken 17 officially before, but I've run like 17:05. And I'm trying to think. My fastest 1500 when I was in college, that I always say that this is like a record that won't be broken at the school, is I ran a 1500 my junior year of college and I broke my leg about 250 meters into the race. So my PR with a broken leg in the 1500 is a 4:39. So I think that's probably one that's going to be pretty hard to break because I'd have to also re-break my leg to be under the same conditions.
That sounds awful.
I wouldn't recommend that.
That's terrible. But I mean, that's a great story. But I mean, so did you know it was like busted during the race?
So I knew something was up because it was aching for like weeks.
Yeah.
Um, Turns out that it was a stress fracture that
Right.
I ignored.
Yeah.
So I kept running on it, and it was the first meet of the season, first outdoor meet of the season. And I like knew I had a good time in me. And I was about, like I said, 250 meters into the race, and I could just feel something snap in the side of my leg. And I'm like, well, that's not good. So I kept running because that's obviously what you do when you're in a race. And I got to the 400-meter mark. And I had said to myself, if I get to 400 meters and it's just not a good time, I'm going to drop out. But if it is a good time, maybe I'll stay. So I got there, and my coach, I forget it. I think I came through in like 72. I was like, okay, that's a good time. We'll stay. So I kept running, and I got to about the last 300 meters, and I was behind a girl that was slowing up, and I'm like, all right, I got to go around her. And as soon as I went to go around her, I turned my foot, and suddenly my leg went from feeling like the bone was like hitting against each other to like grinding against each other, because I guess I kind of displaced the bone when I turned my foot. So then I finished, and my leg was aching. I was crying. I had broke the school record, so my coach was thrilled. I was like, I don't think I can run again for the rest of the season. And it took about 3 weeks for 3 weeks and an MRI, because when I went to the doctor initially, the bone was showing that it was still together because it was just so swollen. So it took about 3 weeks and an MRI for them to finally realize, oh, your leg has just been broken this whole time. Oh, okay.
That's crazy. It's
Yeah.
I have to say, I haven't. It's not the first time I've heard someone breaking their leg in a race and
Mhm.
trying to continue, if not continuing. But yeah, the stress fractures you have to take care of. I mean, that's exactly what happens. They just lead to a broken bone.
Right.
I'm amazed that you could run that well on it though. Like usually, like you hear about like people breaking their foot in like like military training or something like that, and then
Yeah.
they continue on that. But I mean, it hurts really bad, and typically you don't have like a PR with it.
I think it was just a mix of I was in good shape at the time and just hyped up on adrenaline because
Yeah.
I knew I was running well. Every time I passed my coach, he was giving me my splits, and I'm like, oh, I'm running like a really good time. And it's crazy because I have a picture from that race, and the girl that won is Angie Wilson, who went on to become like the American record holder in the 800. She's gone to the Olympics. I'm like, why was I racing a future Olympian on a broken leg at a D3 meet?
You might as well. Why not?
I know
Why not exactly?
it's kind of a wild picture, but I remember after her and a relay team broke the world record in the 4x8. One of my college teammates reached out to me, and she's like, don't you have a picture of you with her? I'm like, I do, and my leg is broken, and I don't know why she was there, but she was there. So it's a cool picture to have and like a cool memory, but at the same time, that was the end of the season, and that kind of stunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's terrific. And I mean, it's really funny though, because people don't realize that D1, 2, and 3 compete against each other in running. They never get that until you explain that to them. You're like, you could run against anybody. Like we
Right.
ran against big schools all the time, and it was no big deal. And you just didn't know who you were going to run against. Sometimes you had no idea who was going to show up or not show up, and if you'd be winning that day or not winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at that particular race, so Angie Wilson was running unattached because she was still in high school at the time. But we were racing Villanova and a bunch of the Philly schools because it was down at the Widener University. So it was like Westchester. I forget. I remember the Villanova girls being there in particular. So, but yeah, all the divisions were there.
Yeah, we actually were at East Stroudsburg one time, and it was a good meet. There's a lot of different schools there, but then there was the javelin competition was actually world class. They had stopped all the running events because there was so many. What you call them, independent? I can't remember what the term is.
Unattached.
Unattached. Yeah, there's unattached competitors that were not even in college that were competing in that meet to throw. It was crazy. It was like watching an Olympic meet.
Nice.
It was pretty wild.
So a lot of accomplishments. So what's the goal now? Like, do you have a goal set in mind?
So I do have a lofty goal of, because I missed the Olympic trials time, a couple years back, it would be nice. I know it's like 10 minutes faster than it was at the time, because now it's what, 2:37 for women. I think if I could ever put that together, that would be really cool. But that would definitely take a lot of, training and focus and kind of changing up what I'm doing right now. But right now, I'm just kind of happy being able to get to races, still doing fairly well. I mean, I ran a 120 half after becoming a mom of two, and that was pretty cool for me. I'm like, okay, like I'm still running similar times to what I did before I had kids. But like the big thing is just being able to, keep up with my kids and be there for them. And, if I have to get my running done early so that I could have the rest of the day with them, then that's what we're going to do. But that's kind of like, if I could ever hit the Olympic trials qualifier time, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's in the cards.
Well, at least you have the goal. That's what's important. So you have something to work towards.
I'm just throwing it out in the universe and we'll see what happens.
That's
But
it.
yeah. But
That's it. You got to do that.
Exactly. I got 4 more years before they're going to run it again. So I got some time.
Yeah.
That's too much time.
Well, you only have to run the qualifying time once.
That's it.
Open. So it doesn't matter when you hit it, as long as the window's open.
Yep.
What's a marathon that you think would be good to try for that time?
So I do know one girl that did hit it for this past cycle, and she ran the Grandma's Marathon and the California International Marathon. So California National is out in Sacramento, and then Grandma's is in Minnesota. So those are always ones that they get a good crowd of elites that are coming there for the purpose of trying to hit those kind of times.
Why do they call it Grandma's?
I actually don't know. I don't know a ton about that one. Maybe there's just a lot of grandmas there. I don't know.
You get butterscotch at the end. Who knows?
Grandmas run free. I have no idea.
I really don't know. I mean, I can ask her and see if she has the answer for me, but I just know the Grandma's Marathon. It's in June. It's in Minnesota. That's why they run it in June, because it's usually not that hot. Like it's a pretty flat course and people always run it there. Yeah. But who knows?
I would imagine it's similar to, it's got to be similar to Boston, where like if you just started searching, you would find like the list of big qualifiers for the Olympic trials.
Right. A lot of people use Houston too. A lot of like the flat ones where you're not going to have much variability of like weather and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. If you're going to
would you ever consider doing the Dopey Challenge like Wolfman did?
For fun, yes. For racing, no.
Yeah, I don't think you could race it.
I give you a lot of props for that. I don't know if I could. I have a problem where when I start a race, I cannot turn off my like competitive nature. Yeah. So like recently I just did the Office 5K up in Scranton, and I was dressed in a full like Pam Beasley costume, pushing my 2 kids together. And I told everybody, I'm just going to go run it. Like, jog with my kids. It's going to be fine. The gun went off and I was like ramming people out of the way with the stroller. Like, I got to see how fast I can run with this. So that lasted all of like 10 feet. So I don't know if I can really like, if I did that kind of challenge, I don't know if I would say I'd be running it for fun, but I know as soon as the gun goes off, I'd be trying to run as fast as possible, because I'm one of those people that I only have so many opportunities to run something or do something. So I might as well give it my all and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I don't think I could do it without I'd be racing the 5K right out of the chute.
It's hard to turn that off. It really is. I struggled with it for a long time, but I don't know. At some point, you just realize it's okay to do it for fun.
I keep saying I'm hoping I get to the point where I can just like go for like a 5 mile run and be like, I got my run in for today and just go back to my house and be happy. But I I have a very hard time turning off that like competitive spirit.
Yeah, it just gets kind of like ingrained in you though with all those years of running that competitive. Now you said you've been running for over 20 years.
Right, which sounds like a long time, but I started when I was 12 in 7th grade cross country. So,
Yeah.
uh, that was in 2003. So it's been a couple years.
Yeah.
Um, and I think to myself, like, back then, I don't know if I would have thought of myself like 20 years later still running consistently. I mean, I've had played soccer from the time I was like 5, so I was doing sports and everything. But I got into cross country and just kind of fell in love with it. Um, but I was thinking about the one of my very first runs on the cross country team. Our coach had been training for a marathon, and she, I guess, thought we should all train for the marathon with her. So we were in like 7th and 8th grade, and she was having us do like 7, 8 mile runs with her. And the one day there were only 2 other girls on the team, and they didn't show up for whatever reason. So I was running with the boys, and they're like, "Don't worry, Marina, you won't get lost. Like, just take a couple turns, and you'll be fine. You'll figure out your way back to the school." I was like, "Okay." So I went for my run, and I'm trying to keep up with the guys so that I don't get lost. And of course, I lost them. And I was trying to remember the route that they told me to go, couldn't remember it. So I just kept making turns and just running. And then I got tired. So then I started walking. I had my watch on, but it wasn't like a GPS watch or anything. It was just like a Timex watch. And I could tell it was about 5:30 when my mom was supposed to pick me up. And I was not back at the school. So here's my mom showing up to practice to pick me up. And my coach is like, "Oh no, we lost her. We can't find her." So for the next about hour and a half, they had the parents looking for me, the high school team looking for me. Everybody was just driving around trying to figure out where I was. And yeah, they found me eventually. I was like 3 miles from the school, and they drive me back, and they picked me up and drove me back. And my mom's like, "Yeah, I thought we weren't ever going to find you again." So like looking back on that, I'm like, wow, I don't know why I came back after, they just like let me run on my own
That's terrible.
while I was a 7th grader.
That's terrible. Yeah, well, I never had an experience like that. They always made sure you ran with somebody so that you didn't get lost.
Yeah, we had a fairly small team, and usually the girls and I would stay together, but I forget why they weren't there for whatever reason. So they were just kind of like, yeah, just take a couple turns. And I went to a very rural school. So we're out like in the country, just running past like pastures and stuff. So there's not many landmarks. And we also didn't have many cell phones at that time. So I just kind of kept running, and they found me like 3 miles from the school. They're like, "Okay, good thing we found you, because we probably wouldn't find you until tomorrow."
When did you figure out that you were good at running?
Um, I mean, I had always, when I was growing up, like my grandpa had always told me, like, "Oh, you're really fast, Marina. When you race the boys on the schoolyard, you're really fast." I was like, "Okay." But what really got me into it was everybody always told me that I was like my mom, and my mom did cross country and track when she was in high school and college. So that was why I joined the cross country team. And they made me they made me feel slow on the team, because we had 7 kids on the team, 4 boys, 3 girls, and I was number 7, always bringing up the rear. So they'd be like, "Oh yeah, Marina, you're doing the best you can." So I don't think it was until track when I ran like, I think I ran like 6:10 or something in the mile, or the 1600, and they were like, "Wow, that's a good time." I was like, "Okay, you guys have been telling me I've been slow for the last, like 6 months." So then I kind of felt like, okay, well, maybe I'm just a miler. Maybe cross country is not, I mean, I kept with it, but I'm like, maybe cross country is not really my thing. Maybe I'm more of like a mile 800 kind of person.
So what?
Yeah, go ahead,
Oh,
Wolfman.
go ahead. So what turned you on to the marathon?
Um, what turned me onto it was in 2015, I went to go see John run the Boston Marathon. And I just remember the atmosphere. We were standing right on the corner of Hereford and Boylston. And I remember after he got done and we went to go get him at the finisher area, I said to him, I'm like, I want to run this next year. He's like, you've never run a marathon. I'm like, I will find one and I will qualify so that I can run this next year. So we ended up doing a marathon in Bucks County, and it was the second week of August. It was 96 degrees. They actually pushed the race up an hour to try and avoid like how hot it was getting. But I think the race started at like 7 a.m. and it was already like 85 to like 86 at the start. And I just remember like dumping like cups of water over my head and cups of Gatorade over my head to the point that my skin was like stained red because it was like that like Gatorade. They started with 200 people in the race, and I think they finished with 150, and it was an out and back course. So you ran the same 6 miles like 4 times.
Oh my gosh.
But I qualified for Boston and I ran it in 2016, so it was all good.
Nice.
It's craziness.
So that was so after I ran that, I kind of just wanted to see like, you know, what else can I do with this? And it took me a while. I'll be honest, I'm not a great marathoner at all. I'm bad with the nutrition. I'm one of those people that when it starts falling apart, it's falling apart real fast. I can rally as much as possible, but I'm definitely more of a like half marathoner, 10 miler. That's really my sweet spot.
Yeah. Pretty amazing though. I mean, your times are phenomenal, and your, you know, resiliency. I mean, that's a hot run.
I just remember finishing it and laying down on the ground, and I asked one of the guys at the finisher chute, like, do you guys have any like Gatorade or anything here? And they're like, oh, it's over at that pavilion. And I think I laid on the ground for 2 hours before I got to the pavilion. And then I laid on the pavilion floor for another hour because I just physically could not stand up.
Yeah.
And
Now,
I'm like, I hope not every marathon's like this because that wouldn't be good.
I was gonna say that's probably just like the first marathon that you had that experience though, right?
I am the queen of the med tent, so no.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I tell people all the time, if you ever want to know what goes on in the med tent, just ask me because I probably had that experience. I've gotten my money's worth out of these marathon majors. You know, when I ran New York in 2015 was the first time I ended up needing an IV after the race because I was just like, my sodium dropped really low and I was dehydrated. So I had to get, they're like, we're probably going to need to do an IV on you before you can leave. And then the second time I ran Boston in 2017, I ended up needing 2 liters of fluid before I could leave the med tent. And then when I ran New York in 2022, I needed another IV. And I'm just like, yeah, just get my money's worth out here.
Now, Wolfman, have you ever gotten any IVs or anything like that?
No, I cannot say I have.
You need to step it up a little bit.
I know. I did take Vaseline from the med tent at Disney in the marathon because I body glided everywhere else except the place that would probably chafe the most. And I was like, Vaseline? I'm like, yeah. I waited till it rained, though. Once it started raining, I was like, that's going to be bad.
Listen, the marathon sounds terrible right now.
I'm not really selling it, but yeah, if you ever have any questions about what they can or can't do, especially in the marathon major med tents at the end there, I always say that's my health insurance. That's where I get my blood work done. That's where I get IVs, you know, because they don't ask for my Highmark insurance card when I'm in there, so I'm good.
Maybe I'll just skip the run and just head right to the med tent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like little field hospitals. Yeah.
I just want to get checked out before I start this thing.
Can you refill these prescriptions too while I'm here?
Basically. I mean, you pay like what, $200-300 for the race. It's cheaper
Yeah.
than going to the doctor.
It is. Can you
Yeah,
put this
for sure.
toward my deductible, please?
That's funny.
When
So
I
what
went,
about John? Does John end up in the med tent ever, or is he just?
he's better than me. He's better than me. Um, he let's see. He has a few times. He has not needed an IV or as extensive like care as I typically do.
Right.
But he's usually pretty good. At our most recent marathon back last month in North Carolina, um, I actually did not need the med tent. Anytime I don't need the med tent after a marathon is a success. I tell my friends, we all cheer. It's a good time. But I laid down on the ground at the end and the paramedics came over to make sure I was okay. And I was like, yeah. I was just really jealous that my shoes, the soles of my shoes got to feel the grass and that my face didn't get to feel the grass. So I just wanted to lay here for a little bit. But my brother-in-law came over and he had been spectating. He's like, don't worry, Marina, you're not the first Martino to need medical services here. Apparently during the race, my father-in-law got very dizzy and they had to take him to the med tent. So we're just a hot mess of a whole team. Just even our family spectating is going to the med tent too. So he was fine and everything. Everybody's good. But yeah, he ended up in the med. He made it to the med tent before John and I did.
Yeah, maybe he's just like, I want to see them. I don't want to wait that long. I'm just gonna head over there.
He was just pre-gaming it for us, just checking to see what they had over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll reserve this cot.
That's funny. So now I guess this is my one of my big questions. You have 2 kids.
Mhm.
You're a runner. Your husband's a runner. You're very into it. Obviously, they're growing up with it. Are you guys going to like be very open to other sports? Or are you going to be kind of pushing them more towards the running?
So if you ask my 5-year-old, when I signed him up for races, so I signed him up for the kids run at the the Scranton half. I told him, I'm like, buddy, I signed you up for the kids race. He was like, ugh, if I gotta, but I'm gonna go slow. And I'm like, okay, you could go slow. So I think I don't know if he's necessarily too sold on it, but we always say whatever they want to do, as long as they're in something, it doesn't need to be athletics. It can be, the arts, it can be music, it could be whatever. Just as long as they're doing something, than just coming home and not that there's anything wrong with playing video games, but going home, sitting on their iPad, playing video games all day, like getting out, doing something, interacting with people. That's really what we want for them. I mean, I played soccer as a kid before I got into running. John played basketball before he got into running. So we've done other stuff before. We think that our 2-year-old will probably be more of the runner than our 5-year-old, but who knows? Who knows? So as long as they're happy and as long as they're healthy, they can do whatever they want.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard, but yeah, you never know. Like I never thought I was going to be a runner or even run in college, and it just kind of everything just pushed me that way. And just got kind of tired of playing all the ball sports in high school, so I just moved over to running only. And yeah, I never would have guessed that, but it was tough and challenging, and I like that part about it. It wasn't easy. Like the other sports were really easy. You just kind of show up, you do your thing, and no big deal. But running was like you have to actually show up and try and put a lot of effort into it, and you still might not win. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Right. My mom always said running is one of those things you get out of it what you put into it. So my mom would always say to me, if you're going to put more miles into it, you're probably going to do better. If you're going to put less, but I know that kind of depends on the person. There are some people that can run really low mileage and run fantastic times, and there are other
Right.
people, high mileage people. But that was always her thing: was you get out of it what you put into it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's pretty true. I mean, Wolfman had mentioned that about trying to break 5 minutes in the mile in high school. How if his coach said to run an hour, no matter how far you get, just run for an hour, and that's that's pretty accurate. Like a lot of kids and younger runners are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're doing other stuff. They're doing it too fast. They're not taking breaks. They're doing all the things wrong. And then when you finally start doing it right, you start getting better. So I know a lot of people who got a lot faster in college from just sticking with it and listening to coaches and reading and watching YouTube and other things to make them faster. For sure.
One thing that helped me when I was coaching at the junior high level was that Pokemon Go was at like its peak. So I'd be like, hey, you guys got eggs you need to hatch? You got to do 10,000 steps. Okay. That sounds like a run. You could carry your phone. So they'd be tasking me, can we run with it in a meet? I mean, keep it in your back pocket so nobody sees it, but sure, if it makes you run faster. So sometimes you're using whatever you can get to get them to move.
That's true.
With that age group, I never had them run any longer than 5 miles in cross country because they were only doing a 3K. I always point out, like, guys, you run more in track than you do in cross country.
Sure.
Yeah. They were big into Pokemon Go.
Sure. I did not know it worked that
works.
way. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's like I said, but whatever the kids want to do. I mean, Wolfman's kids are all going to be runners, though. He's got 7 treadmills in his house. Can't go anywhere without running.
That's right. The house is just a giant treadmill. Gets pretty weird sometimes.
Hey, what are we doing today? Just run down the driveway, get the mail, run back.
Oh, I don't. Running up the driveway, we don't do too much. My son, every time we run, I always stop at the mailbox, and he's like, "We're not running up the driveway." I said, "Hell no." Have you seen that thing? We're not running up that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you told me that before that you don't run up. I would love to run up that driveway. That's all I would do.
I very, 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 very rarely will run up the driveway. And if I really feel like torturing myself, I do what I call the driveway mile. And I run up and down the driveway till I get to a mile, and it's horrendous. I don't like it.
Driveway.
I think a driveway mile is about 8 trips up and down the driveway.
Oof.
Something like that.
I was gonna say, that's a sizable driveway as it is.
He's got one of those driveways that you're like driving on and you're like, I'm glad that my car's working and in good shape because it might not make it up this hill.
Yeah, I would say it's more steep than long.
Yeah, the steepness is what gets you. Because
Yeah.
I'm always like, man, I have to push on the gas to get up this thing. But yeah, so anyway, I think we're just gonna wrap it up there. I'd love to keep talking to you, but I think we're probably gonna have to talk to John next to make this fair, so he can kind of tell us his side of the story.
I felt bad when I had to ask him to print out the waiver because I was like, hey, we don't have a printer at home. Can you print this out at work? Oh, yeah. By the way, they asked me before they asked you to be on the podcast.
Yeah, we did. Listen, it's all part of our scheme here. We want to get John, all revved up so he's ready to go.
Get ready for like a half an hour of him discussing the pose method since that's his big spiel anymore.
That's fine. I want to just, hear his side of the story about these races and about the competitiveness between you two. And then he can talk about whatever he wants after that.
I'd love to talk to him about mechanics. That's what I want to talk about.
Oh, he will talk your ear about mechanics.